Imagine a shy new girl, targeted by cruel bullies who rip her skirt in front of everyone, only to face a jaw-dropping twist just 60 seconds later that leaves them begging for mercy on the floor. This is a story of courage, revenge, and unexpected power that will grip you to the very end. Hit that subscribe button now to never miss a tale that'll leave you speechless. The air in Willow Creek High's cafeteria was thick with the hum of teenage chatter, the clatter of trays, and the occasional burst of laughter that cut through the din like a sharp blade. It was the first day of the fall semester, and the room buzzed with the energy of students catching up after summer, sizing each other up, establishing who'd rule the social hierarchy this year. At the center of it all sat the reigning clique, the self-proclaimed Elite Four. Madison, Brittany, Kaylee, and Tara, 4 girls who wielded their popularity like a weapon, their perfectly manicured nails and designer outfits a stark contrast to the worn linoleum floor. Their table was a throne, their laughter a decree, and their judgment final. Today, their eyes were locked on a new target, Amara Johnson, the new girl who just transferred from a small town in Georgia to this sprawling suburban high school just outside Atlanta. Amara was different, and not just because of her deep, brown skin or the quiet grace in her walk. There was something about her, a stillness, a weight in her dark eyes that made the Elite Four uneasy, though they'd never admit it. They saw her as an opportunity, a chance to flex their power and remind everyone who ran this school. Little did they know, they were about to unravel a chain of events that would turn their world upside down. Amara stood in the lunch line, her tray balanced carefully in her hands, her eyes scanning the room for a place to sit. She wore a simple navy skirt and a white blouse, her hair pulled back in neat braids that swayed slightly as she moved. She'd felt the stares since she walked through the school's double doors that morning, heard the whispers that followed. Her like a shadow, new kid, outsider, different. She was used to it, or so she told herself. Growing up in a small town where she was one of the few black families had taught her how to navigate spaces where she didn't quite fit. But Willow Creek was different, bigger, louder, meaner. She could feel the weight of every glance, every smirk, every hushed comment. As she paid for her lunch, she caught Madison's eye from across the room. Madison, with her platinum blonde hair and ice blue eyes, leaned over to whisper something to Brittany, who giggled and shot Amara a look that was equal parts curiosity and disdain. Amara's stomach tightened, but she kept her head high, her expression calm. She'd learned long ago that showing weakness was like blood in the water. She found a seat at an empty table near the corner, far from the Elite Four's territory. The cafeteria's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the tiled floor. She opened her lunch tray, picked up her fork, and began to eat, trying to ignore the feeling of being watched. But the Elite Four had other plans. Madison stood first, her heels clicking against the floor as she led the charge, her posse trailing behind like loyal soldiers. They moved with purpose, their laughter sharp and deliberate, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. By the time they reached Amara's table, the cafeteria had gone quiet, every eye on the unfolding scene. Amara didn't look up, but her grip on her fork tightened. "Well, well, well," Madison drawled, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Look at the new girl, sitting all alone. Don't you know it's rude not to introduce yourself?" Brittany snickered, twirling a strand of her auburn hair around her finger. Kaylee and Tara flanked them, their arms crossed, their expressions a mix of boredom and malice. Amara finally looked up, her eyes steady, her voice soft but firm. "I'm Amara," she said simply. "Nice to meet you." The simplicity of her response seemed to catch Madison off guard, but only for a moment. She smirked, stepping closer, her eyes scanning Amara's outfit. "Cute skirt," she said, her tone anything but complimentary. "Where'd you get it? The thrift store?" The cafeteria erupted in laughter, the sound like a wave crashing over Amara. She didn't flinch, but her jaw tightened, her fingers curling into her palms. Madison wasn't done. She circled the table, her movements predatory, her voice growing, louder to ensure everyone heard. "You know, Amara, you don't really fit in here. Willow Creek's got standards, and that outfit, it's giving charity case." Brittany chimed in. "Yeah, maybe we should help her out, give her a makeover." Before Amara could respond, Tara reached out, quick as a snake, and grabbed the hem of Amara's skirt. With a sharp tug, she tore it, the rip echoing in the now silent cafeteria. The fabric split up the side, exposing Amara's leg, and the room exploded in gasps and laughter. Amara froze, her face a mask of calm, but her eyes burned with something fierce, something dangerous. The Elite Four laughed, high-fiving, each other reveling in their victory. They expected tears, humiliation, maybe even a desperate dash for the door. What they got instead was something they could never have predicted. 60 seconds, that's all it took. Amara stood slowly, her movements deliberate, her torn skirt hanging awkwardly, but her posture unbroken. The cafeteria was still laughing, still watching, but there was a shift in the air, a crackle of something electric. Amara's eyes locked onto Madison's, and for the first time, Madison faltered, her smirk wavering. "No, you shouldn't have done that," Amara said, her voice low, almost a whisper, but it carried a weight that silenced the room. She reached into her backpack, pulling out a small leather-bound notebook, its edges worn, its cover etched with strange symbols that seemed to shimmer under the fluorescent lights. The Elite Four exchanged confused glances, their confidence cracking. "What's that, your diary?" Brittany mocked, but her voice was shaky. Amara didn't answer. She opened the notebook, her fingers tracing over a page filled with intricate handwritten script that no one could read. The air grew heavy, the temperature dropping noticeably, and a faint hum seemed to emanate from the book itself. What no one in that cafeteria knew, what Amara had kept hidden her entire life, was that she wasn't just a quiet girl from Georgia. Her grandmother, Mama Essie, had been a keeper of old secrets, a woman who spoke of ancestors who wielded power beyond the physical world. Amara had always thought the stories were just that, stories, until the summer before, when Mama Essie had given her the notebook and taught her the words. "They're not just words, child," Mama Essie had said, her voice grave. "They're a legacy. Use them wisely, or they'll use you." Amara hadn't understood then, but she'd practiced the chants, memorized the symbols, felt the strange warmth that pulsed through her when she spoke them. Now, standing in the wreckage of her torn skirt, with the eyes of Willow Creek High burning into her, she understood. The power was real, and it was hers. She began to speak, her voice soft but resonant, the words foreign yet commanding, a rhythmic cadence that seemed to pull at the very fabric of the room. The Elite Four froze, their faces paling as the air around them thickened, the lights flickering. The notebook glowed faintly, the symbols on its pages pulsing in time with Amara's voice. The cafeteria's laughter died, replaced by gasps and murmurs of confusion. Madison tried to speak, to laugh it off, but no sound came out. Her hands trembled, and she took a step back, only to stumble, her knees buckling as if an invisible force pressed down on her. Brittany, Kaylee, and Tara followed, their eyes wide with panic, their bodies sinking to the floor. Within moments, they were on their knees, their hands clasped in front of them, their voices breaking as they begged for Amara to stop. The room was chaos now, students standing on tables, phones out, recording the impossible scene. Amara's voice grew stronger, the words flowing faster, and with each syllable, the Elite Four's pleas grew more desperate. "Please, we're sorry," Madison cried, tears streaming down her face, her perfect makeup smearing. "We didn't mean it," Brittany sobbed, clutching at her chest as if she couldn't breathe. Kaylee and Tara were incoherent, their words a jumble of apologies and whimpers. Amara's eyes were unyielding, her face a mask of calm fury, but inside her heart raced. She hadn't meant to go this far. She'd only wanted to scare them, to make them feel the weight of their cruelty. But the power was alive now, coursing through her, and it wanted more. She stopped abruptly, slamming the notebook shut. The air snapped back to normal, the lights steadied, and the Elite Four collapsed fully to the floor, gasping for breath, their faces streaked with tears. The cafeteria was silent. Every eye on Amara, who stood tall despite her torn skirt, her notebook clutched to her chest. She didn't speak, didn't explain. She simply turned and walked out, leaving the Elite Four crumpled on the floor and the entire school in stunned silence. But the story didn't end there. Word of the incident spread like wildfire, not just through Willow Creek High, but across social media, the grainy phone videos going viral within hours. Willow Creek Witch trended on X, with theories ranging from Amara being a real-life witch to the whole thing being a staged prank. The Elite Four were humiliated, their reign shattered, but they didn't dare speak of what they'd felt in those 60 seconds, the crushing weight, the voices in their heads, the sense that something ancient and unstoppable had judged them and found them wanting. They avoided Amara, their eyes darting away whenever she passed in the halls, but Amara's life didn't get easier. The attention brought new challenges, teachers who watched her too closely, students who whispered about her, and a principal who called her into his office to discuss the incident. The principal, Mr. Hargrove, was a stern man with a penchant for order and a deep distrust of anything he couldn't explain. He sat behind his desk, his glasses perched on the edge of his nose, and stared at Amara with a mix of suspicion and unease. "Miss Johnson," he said, his voice clipped, "we don't tolerate disruptions at Willow Creek. Care to explain what happened in the cafeteria?" Amara sat across from him, her notebook in her lap, her expression unreadable. "They tore my skirt," she said simply. "I defended myself." Hargrove leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Defended yourself? By what, casting a spell? Don't play games with me, young lady. This school has a zero-tolerance policy for bullying and for whatever that was." Amara didn't flinch. "I didn't touch them," she said. "Check the videos." And he had. The footage showed nothing but Amara standing there speaking softly while the Elite Four collapsed. No physical contact, no weapons, no explanation. Hargrove let her go with a warning, but his unease lingered. At home, Amara's life was no less complicated. Her mother, a nurse who worked double shifts to keep them afloat, noticed the change in her daughter, the quiet intensity, the way she clutched that notebook like a lifeline. "What's going on, Mara?" she asked one night, her voice heavy with worry. Amara wanted to tell her, wanted to explain the power she'd unleashed, but the words wouldn't come. How could she explain something she barely understood herself? Instead, she shook her head and said, "Just school stuff, Mama. I'm handling it." But she wasn't. The power was growing, waking her in the night with whispers she couldn't quite hear, filling her dreams with images of fire and shadow. The notebook seemed heavier each day, its pages warmer to the touch, and Amara began to wonder if Mama Isi had told her everything. The twist came a week later, when a new student arrived at Willow Creek. His name was Malik, a lanky boy with a quick smile and eyes that seemed to see too much. He sought Amara out on his first day, finding her in the library where she'd taken to hiding during lunch. "You're the one from the cafeteria," he said, not a question. Amara tensed, ready for another accusation, but Malik's expression was curious, not judgmental. "I know what you did," he said, lowering his voice, "and I know what that book is." Amara's heart stopped. "What are you talking about?" she asked, but her voice betrayed her fear. Malik leaned closer, his voice barely a whisper. My grandmother had one too. It's not just a book, Amara. It's a key. And you're not the only one who has one. Malik's words turned Amara's world upside down. He told her about the Keepers, a secret network of people like them, descendants of those who'd wielded ancient powers passed down through generations. The notebooks were relics, each one tied to a specific lineage, each one capable of unlocking abilities most people would call magic. But there was a catch. The power came with a price. The more you used it, the more it demanded, and those who weren't careful could lose themselves to it. Malik's grandmother had warned him about the shadow, a force that fed on the power and twisted it, turning Keepers into something else, something dangerous. You felt it, didn't you? Malik asked. In the cafeteria. It wanted more. Then you gave it. Amara nodded, her throat tight. She'd felt it, the pull, the hunger, the sense that the power wasn't entirely hers to control. Together, Amara and Malik began to unravel the secrets of the notebook, meeting in secret. To practice the chants, to test the limits of their power. They discovered that the symbols weren't just words, but keys to specific abilities, protection, influence, even glimpses of the future. But each use came with a cost: headaches, nightmares, moments where the world seemed to flicker like a bad TV signal. And they weren't alone. The Elite Four, still shaken from the cafeteria, had started digging into Amara's life, desperate to understand what had happened. Madison, in particular, was obsessed, her pride wounded, her reputation in tatters. She'd found an unlikely ally in Mr. Hargrove, who'd been researching the strange symbols he'd glimpsed in Amara's notebook during their meeting. He'd stumbled across an old book in the school's archives, a dusty tome about local legends, that mentioned keepers of the old ways and artifacts that could bend reality. Hargrove, a man who hated mysteries, was determined to expose Amara, even if it meant breaking every rule in his own handbook. The final twist came at the school's fall talent show, a glitzy event that drew the entire town. Amara and Malik had planned to use the show as a cover to test a new chant, one that could shield them from the growing scrutiny. But Madison had other plans. She'd convinced Hargrove to search Amara's locker, where they found a page torn from the notebook. Amara's mistake, left behind in a moment of carelessness. Armed with the page and a half-understood ritual from Hargrove's book, Madison decided to confront Amara on stage, in front of everyone. The talent show was in full swing, the auditorium packed, when Madison took the microphone, her voice cutting through the applause. "We all know about the new girl," she said, holding up the page. "She thinks she's special, but she's just a freak with a creepy book. Let's see what it really does." The crowd gasped as Madison began to read from the page, her voice faltering over the unfamiliar words. Amara, backstage, felt the air shift, felt the shadows stir. Malik grabbed her arm, his eyes wide. "She doesn't know what she's doing," he hissed. "She's waking it up." The auditorium darkened, the lights flickering, and a low hum filled the air. Madison's voice grew louder, more confident, but her eyes betrayed her fear as the page began to glow, the symbols pulsing. The crowd screamed as shadows moved across the walls, formless and menacing. Amara knew she had to act. She stepped onto the stage, her notebook open, and began to chant, her voice clashing with Madison's. The air crackled, the two powers colliding, and for a moment it seemed the shadow would win, its presence suffocating, its whispers deafening. But Amara was stronger. She poured everything into the chant, her fear, her anger, her hope, and the notebook responded, its light overpowering the darkness. Madison dropped the page, collapsing to her knees, her face pale, her body shaking. The shadows retreated, the lights returned, and the crowd sat in stunned silence. Amara stood over Madison, her voice steady. "Don't touch what you don't understand," she said, and the words carried a weight that silenced even the whispers in the back of the room. The aftermath was messy. Madison and the Elite Four were suspended. Hargrove retired early, and the town buzzed with rumors of the talent show incident. Amara and Malik became legends in their own right, but they kept their distance, knowing the power they wielded was both a gift and a curse. The notebook stayed with Amara, its secrets only half revealed, its warnings ever present. She and Malik continued their training, searching for other keepers, preparing for the day the shadow might return. And at Willow Creek High, no one ever tore Amara's skirt again, or dared to cross the girl with the book that could bring them to their knees.